Rachel. As we always do, we're just going to chitter and chatter for a few minutes while we wait for all the people who registered today to tune in to today's webinar. We've actually been surprised, as always, by the amount of registrations that have been made online through our website, so it's very good. A well overdue topic today, the topic of how to buy a brokerage or second-hand or pre-owned yacht in Asia. Something that we have been talking about internally for a long time, about needing to just undo some of the unknowns around that space. But we will just hold a minute and let all the registered participants join us, and then we'll move on and start today's webinar. With us today is Paul Stamp, who is sitting in our Thailand Phuket office.
Hello.
And also with us today is Patrick Gillo, who's sitting in our head office there in Multihull.
Hello, everyone.
Okay, we've got a few people clicking in there, so we might just start moving forward. We'll just click to the next slide. While we're waiting for everyone to join in, we'll just remind everyone that you can easily go back and look at a number of the webinars that we did. The webinar program, or the webinar concept for Multihull Solutions and the Yacht Sales Co. came about at the start of COVID, way back in around about April of 2020, when Rachel and myself and a few of the other people in our team were working out how do we stay in contact with our wonderful database and client base, and it was decided we should start doing webinars. So we did a number of them during 2020 and also 21, and then we sort of felt that they were getting a little bit tired. So we sort of pulled the brakes on. But then we have decided that over the coming months, we're going to just do a couple more, because there's some specific topics that we need to focus in on and get on paper, as they say. So we need to all have a chat, record it, and then put it up on YouTube. You can go on our YouTube channel, which is either the Multihull Solutions or the Yacht Sales Co. The Multihull Solutions YouTube channel is the one that has all the webinars. And you can see now that I think there's about 25, but what's really impressive is the number of views. So by having this product or these webinars as a product and a resource on YouTube, it's been very helpful for us, to the point where people are contacting us, talking about a boat, and we can just redirect them and say, go and have a look at that webinar. And they come back and go, wow, that was helpful. So make sure you do go and have a look. The next webinar in this series will be one to talk about buying a brokerage or pre-owned boat in French Polynesia, in Tahiti. And we'll also incorporate into that some discussion about buying a boat from our new office location, which is Fiji, which we've only just recently opened. Is that right, Patrick?
Correct, yeah.
Okay. Throughout the webinar, you are quite welcome to ask questions. You'll see at the bottom of your screen, there'll be or top of the screen, however it sits on yours, is a Q&A button. If you open that up, you can type your question. We will endeavour to either answer the question as we're going, if we feel that it's relevant to where we're at in the discussion, or we'll hold it over to a Q&A session at the end, or we will hold it over and we'll come back to you directly via email with an answer to your question. So but rest assured, any questions that are asked, as long as they're logical and fair questions, any questions asked we will respond to. Okay, so my name is Greg Boller. I'm the new yacht sales manager for Multihull Solutions and the Yacht Sales Co. And assisting us today is Rachel Crook in the background, who's our group marketing manager. And Rachel has done yet another wonderful job of putting together today's presentation. So thanks for that, Rachel, in the background. Okay, our presenters. So first of all, today we've got Patrick Gillo. I think a lot of you, if you've watched any of our webinars before, have probably already virtually met Patrick, or you may have actually met Patrick at many of our boat shows. So Patrick, do you want to just introduce yourself, please?
Yes, sure. So thanks, Greg, for the introduction. yeah, been in charge of the used boat sales there for Multihull Solutions and Yacht Sales Co. for quite a few years now. And before that, involved overseas with shipyard manufacturing catamarans. So yeah, overall, probably over 20 years of experience in the marine industry, which I'm more than happy to share with everyone here, specifically your team there around as well, all the brokers. So yeah, happy to help with any particular questions that you guys may have. We had a presentation some time back about buying a boat overseas in general. So these are thanks to the background there from Europe and everything, and the foot we've got with the partners overseas as well, other brokers. We can help all of you there looking at boats overseas.
Very good. And then if we just flick over the page, Paul Stamp, welcome, Paul. If you'd like to just maybe say hello and introduce yourself.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Greg. Yeah, so I arrived in Phuket 18 years ago. I came in working for Sunsail as a charter captain and an RYA instructor. Since then, I've worked for 4 or 5 boating companies in Phuket, covering yacht management, sales of both motor yachts and sailing yachts, and even up to super yacht sales and management for the Fraser Group. Yeah, so it's been very, very busy couple of years, which we'll move into shortly. But that's me, and I'm again here to answer any questions both on new and used boats from Asia. So I'm heading up the 2 offices we have in Phuket. And in Singapore, we have a wonderful office down in Sentosa at 1 degree 15. And also we've just recently opened a new facility in the Philippines, which again, we'll touch on shortly.
Thank you. That's very good. Okay, so today's webinar, but the thing that that made us or motivate us to do this webinar is that Patrick and I were with Paul in the office in Thailand, maybe just 4 or 5 weeks ago. And we realized that if you go on the Multihull Solutions or Yacht Sales Co websites at the moment and look at our brokerage listings, the place where there is often the most listings is Thailand, is in Paul's marinas. Thanks to the hard work of his team to generate the listings. But what we then find is when we talk to our brokers in our own network, so our own team members, even within themselves, there's this concern or fear about how do I help someone buy a boat that's lying in Thailand if that client is in New Zealand or Australia or somewhere else in the world. People are a little bit nervous about the idea of how do I buy a boat that's not in my home territory. And those of us who know that it's actually not that difficult. And not only that, there's the added advantage of, wow, we've got yachts that are listed for sale in one of the most beautiful cruising grounds in the world, whether that be Phuket and Phang Nga Bay, or whether that be Tahiti or Fiji. Why not buy a boat in one of those locations, maybe even go and use it and sail it there for a while before rushing to get it back to your home country? And it's often in our own business, we hear our brokers talking to someone about buying one of the boats that is listed for sale in Thailand. And the discussion just always goes straight to, how do I ship it? How do I get it here? How long does it take? When maybe the discussion could be around, would you like to spend some time sailing in Thailand before you ship the boat or relocate the boat back to Australia? So that was what was the emphasis for having today's discussion, was to maybe just help people understand a bit more about the benefits and the processes behind buying a yacht that might not be located in their home country. Would you agree, Patrick?
Yes, this is exactly the case. I think instead of rushing the boat back into your home country, whether Australia or any other, and rushing the boat into paying taxes right away, why don't you enjoy the boat in her location? Most of them are in pretty nice positions around the world, so you may as well take advantage and see under what circumstances Can you keep on cruising in that location? Can you get any service there on site? What are the challenges with taxes or anything? How long can you stay? So all this, I think, needed to be addressed for people to make the educated decision.
Very good. So that's what we're going to be talking about today, folks. And Paul especially is going to lead that discussion with all of his experience. So we'll move forward. Why did that not work? Just bear with me. Ready? Try again. There we go. Okay, so this is a picture of the growing Multihull Solutions and Yacht Sales Co. office network. Obviously, we've got our established offices all across Australia, and our colleague Dominic is doing a wonderful job down there in Auckland. We've got New Caledonia with Jill up there. We've got Fiji that has just opened recently, Tahiti, which we've had now running for a number of years. But today is about Asia. So Paul, can you maybe just explain what's going on and what the office arrangement is in your part of the world?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm based in Phuket, as I said earlier. We've got two very nice offices in Phuket. The head office is based in Phuket Boat Lagoon. And the second is based in Phuket Yacht Haven on the North Shore, where our senior broker, Charles Robinson, runs this office here. We've also got a very nice office in Singapore, as I mentioned, at 1 degree 15, which is headed up by a Singaporean guy, Daniel Au. And very recently, we've just opened a new office in the Philippines. So, yeah, it's a thriving market, and quite interesting how some of the sales have developed, because during the 2 years of COVID, we found ourselves having a lot of Australian interest, and they were rightly very cautious about buying a boat when they weren't able to get here. So we done many video walkthroughs, and we're actually still doing those as an initial inquiry. But during COVID, that's how we were selling boats, and even selling the boats and having a video linked to the survey, which a lot of our buyers were very interested in. Even
sea trials. We have had some sea trials done over the distance.
Yeah. But no, the business has absolutely thrived during COVID, which many industries throughout the world have suffered. But we've just about hit the 50 mark since the 1st of January 2021. Just from the Phuket offices, we've sold 50 boats, which is fantastic.
Yeah, and it's good. It's good to speak the numbers, because volume equals experience. So it's great. Okay, so stepping across, Paul, do you mind introducing your team to us, please? Because,
yeah, so obviously,
and sorry, the reason I say this again, I had a client the other day who sort of thought that maybe all we had was a tin shack on the beach up in Asia, and that's why we said we had an Asian office. People don't understand the extent or the established size of our business in Thailand. So hence why we want to let everyone know who the team is.
Yeah, so I've obviously already introduced myself, but we also have Charles Robinson, very experienced broker, who's actually currently just on his way back from Langkawi, having just completed another sale yesterday. Charles is a wealth of knowledge and an excellent broker. He really does well. Kevin Quilty. Kevin was the founder of Sunsail in Southeast Asia. An incredibly experienced person to have on hand. Richard Klein. Richard's one of our new brokers. Richard's half Swiss, half English, and is learning the trade well, and he's already well on the way. I think he's sold 4 or 5 boats already since his start. On the Thai staff, we've got Yui. Yui's our administration manager and does an absolutely sterling job, as you can imagine, with those numbers of boats. Her hands are always busy. And also Yuk's very experienced too in the marine industry. She's held many previous positions, and she assists very well with the brokerage listings. Now, an important guy who we have on board is Nat. Nat is my service manager, especially when we have a new boat handover. Nat's there to assist with warranty matters, and commissioning the boat before we hand it over to the clients. We all, and should be noted as well, Nut's also a fully qualified captain, so we often use Nut on deliveries, moving boats from here to Langkawi to Malaysia to Singapore. So he's a real good guy to have on hand. The final two, Charlotte Cruz is our new manager in the Philippines, who I had the pleasure of meeting last week at head office in Mooloolaba in Australia. Welcome on board, Charlotte. And Daniel, sorry, we don't have a picture of Daniel. He's not the best looking lad anyway, but Daniel is heading up the office in Sentosa in Singapore. And Daniel's a very well-known individual in Singapore, and he's had a very good start to life working for Multihull Solutions and the Yacht Sales Co in Singapore too. So yeah, we've got quite a young team apart from me and Charlie, but yeah, it's exciting times, and I wish them all the success for this year.
And I think it would be also important, because there'd be people who are watching this webinar who've been involved with our business in Asia for a number of years. They're probably going, well, hang on, where's Andy? So I think it's important to just bring up that Andrew de Bruin, who obviously started Multihull Solutions up there in Asia, and then worked with Paul and the team over the years. Andrew is now in our Brisbane office. So if you're looking for Andrew, he is still with us, but he is now managing our Brisbane office in Australia. So you can tap into him there. I think it's important to say that, because people are probably going, where's Andrew?
Yeah, sorry about that, Andrew.
He's probably watching this now. So this slide here is just about buying a new yacht in Asia. And this webinar is not really about that, but it is to say that amongst that team, we have people who are skilled and knowledgeable on all of our new yacht brands, whether that be Fontaine-Pajot sailing catamarans, whether that be Fontaine-Pajot Power, whether that be Jufor sailing, whether it be the Absolute Power yachts, Neil Trimarans, the Cora Cat, the Tesoros. So we've got so many great brands in our stable now, even to the fact that I think we forgot to put an FP Sail image there. But there's heaps there, and Paul especially is able to talk to anyone about buying any of those new yacht brands from any of our Asian offices. So there they are there, the brands: Fontaine-Pajot Sail and Power, Lean, Cora, Jufor, Neil, Ocean Voyager, Iliad, Rapido, and Stealth. So we've got a good stable of brands, and it's growing all the time. But the main purpose of today's discussion is to talk about buying a pre-owned, call it second-hand, call it brokerage yacht in Asia. And one thing you'll notice today is that the discussion will be rather Phuket and Thailand centric. That's because that is where we do sell, and the most turnover of boats in our business occurs in the brokerage space. But that doesn't mean we're not happy to discuss with anyone that wants to know about doing the same thing in Philippines, in Singapore, in Malaysia. But so ask questions, drop us an email. But today will probably be a little bit Thai centric, but we'll talk about the overall cruising area as well. Okay, so here we come to the nuts and bolts. So we're talking about buying the pre-owned boat in Asia, Paul. So yep. Maybe if you could get started with a little bit of background there about Thailand.
Yeah, so Thailand, as I said, Phuket in particular, it has become the hub of boating in Southeast Asia. Indeed, during COVID, we had many super yachts kind of en route between Europe and Australia. I think at one time the Yacht Haven had 9 super yachts stranded, all in excess of 70 meters LOA. So it's definitely a very popular destination to go to. And, we just want to try and advise people about, the facilities, the cruising area around where we are. And just in Phuket alone, we have 5 marinas, one of which is completely for the day tour market, but the other 4 marinas are very nice, well-equipped marinas with great facilities. I think you want to click the next slide.
I think
Greg, if you can.
That's fine. So then the big discussion that we had yesterday when we were doing over the last few days, putting this presentation together, Paul, was that we but there's so many questions around foreign flag vessels and the flagging. And so if I'm from New Zealand or Australia or England and I want to come to Multihull Solutions and buy a boat that's in Phuket, how does it all work? So first of all, foreign flag vessels.
Yeah, well, a foreign flag vessel, i.e. a boat that's flagged UK or BVI or Australia, all foreign flag vessels have a length of stay in certain countries. Now here in Thailand, they are entitled to stay here for 6 months, but then they can extend that quite easily for an additional 6 months. So I've put Thailand down for 1 year. So any foreign flag vessel is allowed to stay here for 1 year. The people on board, however, whether it be an owner or a captain, they are only entitled to a 90-day stay. So those people need to check out, do a visa run, if you like, to a bordering country. Some go to Burma, some go to Malaysia, some have a weekend down in Singapore. But essentially, the foreign flag vessels have 1 year in Thailand.
Yeah, and they can go with the boat or go there themselves on a plane or other mean of transport. So the boat could stay for this amount of time, and they may have to leave themselves to be in accordance with their visa, or leave with the boat and take the opportunity to go somewhere else and then come back.
Yeah, I think another important point to raise here, Greg, is that whoever checks the boat into Thailand is responsible for checking the boat out of Thailand as well, either them or someone with power of attorney to do so on their behalf. So that's quite an important point moving forward. Let's focus on
that for a minute. So what you're saying is if Joe Bloggs brings the boat in, comes into your office and says, look, I've just sailed from the Maldives, I'm ready to sell my boat. You go, great, let's list it. You then have to instruct them that when it comes time that a sale occurs, they or a power of attorney of theirs has to be present. So the new buyer can't just take the boat and sail it away.
No, they cannot. A person cannot buy a foreign flag vessel while it's visiting Phuket. And it's a very common question for buyers. Why is the handover port in Langkawi, Malaysia? And that's the simple reason behind that. So at the moment, I've just introduced it to Charles and to Kevin. They're both on their way back today to Phuket from Langkawi, having both completed separate pre-owned boat sales. So, our brokers are down there quite often. And it's, the ideal scenario is for the buyer and the seller and the broker all to be in Langkawi. And it's a pretty seamless, straightforward process, which takes half a day.
So let's talk about that. So first of all, from let's say an example of one of those boats that's being sold, was listed for sale and was lying in your marina, in Royal Phuket Marina, and Alpo Marina, in your marina. And then how long does it take to get to Langkawi? How far away is Langkawi?
Langkawi is 130 nautical miles from Phuket Boat Lagoon. So it's a day sail for a sailing boat. Power boats can do it anywhere in between 4 and 12 hours, depending on how fast you want to go. But 130 miles there, and it's a nice ride down. It's a fantastic cruising ground in between Phuket and Langkawi.
So, do you find that often that would be where the boat that is selling, that the seller of the boat and the broker, as in Charlie or Kevin or yourself, or whoever, would go together on the boat down to Langkawi?
Yeah, that's definitely the easiest way, is for all three parties to be there. It's not essential, but it makes it a much easier, seamless process. Whether we go on the boat or some buyers fly into Langkawi, the sellers usually take the boat down themselves. The broker, if we have time, will go with them. If not, then we'll fly.
Okay, very good. So so basically Langkawi is the transaction point.
Yes, I mean, boats can be, the odd boat can be sold in Phuket, but you have VAT implications which are very complicated, and also you've the power of attorney issue where you have to appoint someone to move the boat. But at the end of the day, a foreign flag vessel should be sold outside of Thailand.
And when that comes time, when you're sitting there in Langkawi and you're then doing the final transaction and the contracts, it's all, and Patrick, this is probably you to help with this, it's all done on exactly the same form of yacht sale agreement as you would be using if the sale was happening in say Australia. Is that right, Patrick?
Yes, we actually use some international forms from the International Yacht Brokerage Association, and these are the standard forms. And yes, you sign them one country, and you can finalize the deal in another without any issue. And we do this all the time. From the 50 boats that Paul was talking about, the vast majority would have gone through this process. And
then and I know that we've spoken about this before, Patrick, in the webinar we did about buying a boat overseas, where we focused in on Europe. What about the financial transaction? Like, the buyer is obviously going to be concerned about, oh, hang on, where am I paying into? Is it secure? The seller is obviously wanting to make sure that the money is going to come to their bank account. So how do you manage that with these Asian transactions?
So we have holding accounts in all the different currencies that may be needed, naming US dollars, euros, Australian dollars, Kiwi dollars. So this can happen. We've got facilities in Singapore, also in Thailand, and in Australia with a head office where the money can transit. So these are dedicated accounts, same as an escrow account, dedicated to the sale. So no one touches anything, and the money remains there for the time of the sale. No one touches anything, and it has to be released under the terms of the agreement, either refunded to as a deposit or paid towards the boat as is notified in the contract.
And with the invoicing and everything, we use security measures with all our invoicing, so that if someone is about to pay money, that the account details are validated to make sure there's no, sometimes where an email goes from there to there and somehow it gets intercepted and changed. So we've got lots of securities in place.
I think this is a very, very good point. I mean, the frauds are intensifying everywhere around the world with the flow of money and wire transfers. So we have taken some very strict measures using encrypted ways to send the invoice, confirming with the passcode, and we don't send any money before we have a second way of authentication for the destination of the funds. So there is an increasing risk, so we have to take any measures there. So some clients sometimes find it frustrating because we are calling again to confirm and everything, but this is obviously for the safety of their own transaction, their funds, and the payment. So it is absolutely necessary. That's why I strongly discourage today people to do this outside of the box with wire transfers overseas. It is a proper real threat.
Okay, then the transactions occurred in Langkawi. The dealers, the broker is there. The seller is happy. The buyer has now taken possession of this lovely new boat. They can obviously insure it just like they would if they had purchased the boat in Australia or New Zealand. So insurance can be arranged. Then, can they then just turn around and sail back into Thailand and have a nice couple of months of sailing, Paul?
Well, it depends what they want to do with the registration at that point, because for argument's sake, they might have bought a BVI registered boat, and they may want to take it back to Phuket with a different registration. They might want to import it into Thailand and pay 7% VAT. But, the majority of people in this region, they enjoy registering with the Langkawi flag. It's very, very simple. It's very, very reasonably priced. And then they can go back into Thailand or sail on to other destinations as a visiting yacht, and gives them another 12 months back in Thailand. Or, you know, we've just recently sold a 70-foot motor yacht to an Australian client, and he actually sorted his Australian registration out while he was in Malaysia. So
Yeah, it could be on the next slide, but we may as well talk about it now. Patrick and I were talking about this yesterday. So, for instance, most of the people that are buying Fontaine Majots off myself as an example and doing a factory pickup in France, they will, when they arrive or in the process in the weeks leading up, will organise with AMSA and register and set up their Australian flag for that boat. So when they pick that yacht up from La Rochelle in France, they sail away with an Australian registered vessel, on the understanding that they only have to pay duty and GST to the Australian government when that vessel arrives back into Australian waters. So we were talking about that again. You mentioned the Langkawi flag, but if it was an Australian buyer or a New Zealand buyer, as an example, there is no reason why they can't, from the time of the transaction, by going through the right paperwork, they can transfer the flag registration of that vessel. Let's say it was an English vessel, and they can transfer it into an Australian flag and sail around Asia with an Australian flag without any penalty.
Yeah,
and then my understanding is
it's not really a transfer. You don't transfer anything there. You just change. So you buy the boat and you deflag the boat to whatever it was in the past, and you add your own flag. And I agree. I think the easiest is to go with the flag of your own country, because then everything matches, doesn't raise suspicions there wherever you cruise in. It all you are. As you said, a Kiwi with a New Zealand passport, Australian with your Australian passport, Australian flag, everything matches. Thank you very much. You go, and those flags are very well received around the world.
How do you deflag a boat, Patrick?
Well, this is part of the sale process, and this is what we assist with when the boat changes hands and you become the happy owner of that new boat there for you. Then we need to initiate the deflag, so the deregistration process. We usually hold some funds off the owner of the boat to make sure that this happens, because you can be the owner of the boat, but if you don't have the registration under your name, you won't be able to go anywhere. So these are two different things. You need to be the owner first. So there's the bill of sale for that. And then with this bill of sale, you'll be able to register the boat, but you need also the deflag certification, which is the paperwork showing that the boat is no longer registered under the previous flag. With those two documents, then you will be able to register under your own flag or the flag of your choice. And the other thing,
or you can just keep sailing with the flag that the boat was previously flagged under, correct?
No.
Okay.
No. The flag is tied to the person who is registering the boat, who owns the boat. So in all those cases, well, unless, yes, say the guy had a UK flag and you are a UK resident, then this is when you can do a transfer. It will be under your name though, so there is a process there to do, but it will remain under the same authority. But in a lot of cases, it is a proper change completely. And there's only one thing I'd like to add, if you allow me. A lot of people have the wrong perception that the registration is tied to the taxes, and it will, but only, as Greg was saying, and I'd like to emphasize on that, only when you bring the boat physically into your own country. Until then, you have the flag of your country, but you don't have to pay the taxes. So this is what happens to most of our clients in Europe there for new boats, but used as well. So they happily cruise with their beautiful flag from home, but they haven't paid taxes and they won't until they bring the boat back home, if they ever do this.
And the term there is domicile. It's about where you are domiciled. So
Correct.
even though,
where you're a resident and where you pay your taxes.
yeah. Okay. That's good. I think we'll keep going. We'll probably trip over that subject a bit more as we go along. So we'll just move along. Resetting the clock. Paul?
Yeah, I mean, resetting the clock, Greg, I think we just need to touch on, when your initial 6 months stay here in Thailand, you have to report to the Harbour Department and, obtain an extension. But when your year is up, it's time to go. You must check out at a specific date. Otherwise, you go into an overstay situation. There is a way around that if your boat is under maintenance, you can apply for an extension to that year. But it obviously means the boat is immobilized. It can't be moved. It's on the hard stand having shaft realignment or whatever the situation. But yeah, when the time's up, you have to check out. So they check out of Thailand. They sail down to Langkawi as an example. They check into Malaysia. And then the following day or even the same day, they can check back out of Malaysia and come back, check back into Thailand, and they have another year.
Okay, very good. Oops, sorry, just moved my mouse. Hang on. Impact on the sales transactions.
Yeah, I mean, we've touched on that a little bit already. Obviously, if someone lists their boat with me as a foreign flag vessel, the impact on the sale is that, the ideal scenario is having the buyer, the seller, the boat, and the broker all in Langkawi for a seamless sale. But I just wanted to flag that being a foreign flag vessel on stay in Thailand, there is an impact on the sale, and that's why we have the handover port being in Malaysia.
Okay, so listen, we've got quite a few questions coming in. I'm just going to pick a couple of them off now because they're relevant to where we're at. One is from actually one of our colleagues, Mark Hodgson. So thanks for the question, Mark. He says, is there an extra charge for the buyer if they can't get to Thailand? No,
but there might be a process that we need his authority to undertake something. So we would probably have to ask them for a power of attorney document signed and sealed, so we can act on their behalf with a power of attorney.
And then Nathan asked a question that Patrick's already answered, which is duty and GST does become payable as soon as the boat enters Australian waters. I actually don't think that was a question from, yes, it was a question. And then just while we're there, do you inherit the tax liability if VAT or GST is not paid by the original owner? Do you understand the...
Well, there's something very important that you take into consideration here, indeed. So that's a good question, because if the boat, well, it depends on a few countries, but I'll talk about Australia for now. If the boat has paid taxes in Australia, moves to Thailand, and another Australian buyer comes across that boat, wants to buy it, buys the boat, brings the boat back into Australia, the rule is, even though it may not seem logical to some of you, that's the rule, and we know it very precisely. If the boat changes hands overseas, whenever it comes back here into Australia, it pays taxes again.
Wow. So realistically,
the only way to avoid this would be for the boat to come back under the same ownership as she left Australia, and then the transaction happening in Australia. So that's very unlikely, because it would mean that I mean, it depends. If the owner doesn't mean doing the delivery, especially if he has paid the taxes. We had the example there not too long ago of a nice boat in Asia who had paid taxes in Australia, and I advised him, I think you will have a massive advantage if you put the boat on the market in Australia, because this is where the tax paid becomes attractive to those who want to buy the boat. Otherwise, if the change of ownership happens overseas, the taxes will be due again.
Very good. Very good. Very good question. Thank you, Mark. No, I think it was. And then, okay. I'll mention this question now to you, Paul, but you might actually want to go directly to this client afterwards. But it's just saying, would a Thai resident have to pay tax on a Langkawi flag boat if bringing it back to enjoy Phuket waters? I might leave that one for later.
No, I can answer that. I can answer that now.
Yep.
If a Thai resident has his boat Langkawi registered, he comes back into Phuket as a visiting yacht. He doesn't have to pay any tax.
Okay, there you go.
It's quite simple, but he has 1 year to be here. I mean, the main reason people Thai register a boat is to use it commercially.
Yes.
Which, you know, is a completely different entity, but that's the only reason. Some people with an 18-foot runabout, like a little bayliner or something, yeah, they would have their little boat Thai registered and pay a 7% VAT. But for a Phuket resident, bringing a Thai registered boat, a Langkawi registered boat into Thailand, there's no tax to pay.
Okay. And we've had some other questions there, but we're just going to hold them over to the Q&A at the end.
Yeah.
But I think so far, gentlemen, this is good. I think we're covering what I'm sure a lot of people are wanting to learn about. Folks, if you're out there watching this and you think we're not touching on what you want to know, please just type in the question in the Q&A section, sorry. Okay, changing country flags. We've talked about that. I don't think we have to go on to that. All right, so Paul, over to you now to have a bit of a chat about your facilities in Thailand.
Yeah, so this is a picture of the office where I'm based, along with Yui, half of the week Yuk, and Richard Klein is also based here. This is in Phuket Boat Lagoon, one of the earlier marinas on the island. So yeah, you're just looking at these 4 pictures. The Boat Lagoon is the main picture on the top row. Very nice marina, Thai owned, Thai managed, great hard stand, good restaurants, good retail, beautiful apartments and villas. It's very nice. Our second office is based on the Yacht Haven, which is the left-hand side image on the bottom row. This is where Charlie Robinson is located. That land you see in the distance is actually Phang Nga province, which is that's a waterway between the 2 islands. So that's the mainland, and Phuket is the island, albeit they are joined by a bridge. The next one in the center on the front row is Ao Po Grand Marina. Now, just a point of interest, Yacht Haven and Ao Po marinas are accessible 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. So these 2 marinas are more suited to super yachts.
So they're not restricted by tide.
Correct. Whereas the final marina, Royal Phuket Marina, is the very close neighbor of Phuket Boat Lagoon. They are both limited by tide. So usually you have a good window to get in and out, but depending on your drafts, your keel length, there is some restrictions. But 4 very good marinas, they're all very full, albeit having sold a lot of the boats to Australia, they're emptying, and there's odd berths available now.
And from my experience, Ao Po Grand Marina, which is the one in the middle at the bottom, if you're looking for a marina that is closest to the cruising area of Phang Nga Bay, that is probably the one that gives you direct access.
Yep. I mean, Ao Po's on the northeast corner, so it's right at the entrance to the national park of Phang Nga Bay. Very, very good marina, very well managed. But it's a bit of a drive to get there, but you're straight out into the park, you know, and a lot of people go and just sit on their yacht and admire the view from that marina. It's beautiful.
Very good. Services.
Yep, there's a lot of services available, especially in 3 of those marinas. A lot of contractors from expat community. whatever you want doing to your boat, it can be done. I would say up to 40 meters is possible for a haul out in Phuket. Great contractors, from electricians to gel coat to fiberglass to carpentry, engineers. We've got the lot. And there's a lot of Australian, there's a lot of French, a lot of British owned companies. And I think you'll find it from recent experience. Some clients found it a lot cheaper than Sydney, for example, where they were taking their boat to have their work carried out. And on the whole, they were pretty impressed with the work that they had carried out. So yeah, there's a lot of services, not only in Phuket, but also up in Pattaya, Chonburi, at Ocean Marina, which is the 5th main marina in Thailand. But also, there's great facilities in Langkawi, even other marinas down in Malaysia, in Pankor, for example, and down in Singapore. But I think for value for money, I think Phuket offers very, very good services in comparison to, let's say, Singapore and Sydney.
And I've stepped back one because in that picture there of the Phuket Boat Lagoon Marina, the top picture,
yeah,
you've got the slipway there, and you've got the travel lifts, you've got all the marine services, but right beside it, 200 yards away is a very nice hotel. So it's not only that, it's a great place. Your boat's being worked on, but you've got a great hotel just right there. Yeah,
they've got 3 travel lifts. I think they've just last year bought their 3rd travel lift with a load of 120 ton. So it lifts boats from like 100 feet LOA. But if you want something even bigger, you can drive down to Trang and Satun, and they have lifts down there now, 500 ton. So there's a lot of equipment and a lot of services available.
Yeah. Okay. And then facilities in Thailand, shipping and export and skipper delivery. So just before you go there, I did have a question there from one client, by the way, is rough cost of delivery of a used catamaran from Asia to Australia, say Sydney. So I think you're going to go across a couple of examples.
Yeah. The skipper delivery cost, on a basic 40-foot sailing boat, we've seen costs in between 20 and 30,000 Aussie dollars. It does vary. I think a lot of Australian buyers have their own Australian captain, but there are many, many delivery teams here in Phuket. And recently we've had boats delivered by some of our own skippers going to Singapore, to the Philippines, even to Taiwan, Jeju in South Korea, Bali, and down to Australia and beyond. So there is the skipper network, but again, it depends on the level of the captain that you want, and it depends on the size of the boat. Regarding shipping, the major shipping companies of the world coming to Asia, usually around Thailand, we use 7 Stars and Peters and May very often. 7 Stars have got a very good service where it's a water to water, so they can literally plonk the boat into the water, as in this picture, with spreader bars, nice safe into the water, start your keys, you drive out the slings and straight into the marina. So that's it stops a lot of the headaches of having to go to a container port. Locally, we've got Port Klang in Malaysia is the nearest, and Singapore as well. A bit more red tape, and but it's a more frequent service on the container ships. So that's a weekly service from the UK and from France to Southeast Asia, whereas the 7 Stars water to water on a crane, they're usually around 4 a year, 1 every quarter, but on demand they can increase. So yeah, that's the shipping. And just another note there, some owners actually take their own boats, and the 70-foot motor yacht I described earlier, they had some works carried out here in Phuket before they left, and they've just taken 3.5 months to sail from Phuket at their own leisure. So they've done lots of surfing, they've done lots of diving. They went to Komodo to see the Komodo dragons. They call it the Batam. They've been down to Bali. They've had an absolute whale of a time. And at the moment, they're somewhere in between. They're somewhere in between Surfers Paradise and Sydney. So they should be home in about a week's time. And they left, 3-4 months ago.
Which boat was that?
That was the Outer Reef 70.
Yeah.
The Australian owners, they were very happy with the contractors that we recommended to them, and the surveyors we recommended to them. We've got Australian, European surveyors here, which again are listed on our website, the favorites. As again, we've got all the services that are needed.
Very good. Sorry, hang on. Don't know why it does that. Right. We are about to go on now and talk about the cruising ground. But I think before we get into the pretty pictures and the joys of sailing in Asia, we might just go to a couple of the questions, if that's all right, the questions that are relevant to imports and taxes and so on. So one there is, and we've sort of talked about this, Patrick, but Simon has asked further, does this mean any boat you buy overseas and you flag to Australia, you're liable for GST on return to Australia? You're on mute, Patrick.
Yes.
Yes, I agree. And it's not just GST, it's duty as well, correct?
Correct.
Yes. Okay.
Is that duty on new? Is that on second-hand as well as new boats, Patrick?
No, it's on new boats. There is a caveat there where you can bring a boat built in one of the trade agreement countries back into Australia and avoid import duties if they come directly from that country into Australia, usually on a cargo or something. So it means what New Zealand, means China, it means any of those countries with a trade agreement with Australia. But on a used boat, you're very likely to have to pay the import duties, even if it has been built in one of those countries, because the rules are very difficult and severe. I would rather tell you have to, and maybe if you find if you're lucky there with the custom broker, not, but the custom agent at the time, you may be able to have a case there, but it's going to be very difficult.
So I do know the answer to this next one. It's a good question, but I'm going to let you answer it again, Patrick. Do you pay tax? And this is Simon. Thanks for asking good questions, Simon. Do you pay tax on the purchase price overseas or the revalued price if you return to Australia in 5 years' time, for example?
Yeah, that's a good question. So indeed, if you buy a boat overseas and you come back into Australia within 12 months, it's going to be on your purchase price. So your bill of sale, which is the ownership document, the change of ownership document, this is the price which you will have to pay taxes on. If it's beyond this 12-month limit, then it will be a valuation done on site by a proper surveyor who has been acknowledged by Border Force. So needless to say there, it's going to be pretty much the market value of the boat there anyway. You won't be able to negotiate there much. The guy is very tied. Customs are getting smarter and smarter there as well. They look at prices overseas and everything. So there is no much way there to gain a bit. And the other thing I'd like to add is if you have imported the boat into Australia, paid your taxes, and you resell the boat within 12 months, then the amount of taxes may have to be adjusted. You have to declare the value that you sold the boat to Border Force, and they may have to reassess. If you're lucky, you get a credit. I've seen it before, but in most cases, you have to pay a little bit more to adjust to if the valuation, say, of your importation has been below the price that you managed to get when you resold the boat afterwards in Australia, you have to adjust the taxes.
So this is Border Force capturing those people who say, right, I'm going to go to the Caribbean and buy that boat that's really cheap, sail it to Australia, pay as less tax as possible, and then I'm going to sell it for a pretty penny. And then, so the Border Force are onto that, obviously. They're saying, okay, that's all right, you can do that, but we want a bite of the cherry.
Correct.
Okay, hey, they don't miss a trick. All right.
But the rules are a little bit different. We were talking about Australia. I mean, we could go on and on, but just briefly, in New Zealand, there is it is way more attractive because in New Zealand, no matter what, it will be on the bill of sale of the boat. So say you bought the boat 5 years ago in overseas, wherever, you bring your boat as a Kiwi back home, you will have the benefit of a depreciation of 10% of for any full years since you bought the boat there on your bill of sale. So that's a massive benefit that our colleagues there in New Zealand can enjoy. But I'm happy to go into more details of specific countries on a case by case there after that meeting.
Yep. Very good. And then Paul, I just a question of my own here. Do you find that most of the boats that you're listing and selling are what we would call, and you see it all on the brokerage websites, boats that are called taxes unpaid? So boats that have been cruising the world in between all the different jurisdictions, staying for just the right lengths of time, and then arriving and being listed for sale by you as a taxes unpaid boat?
Yeah. And I would say that the majority, at least more than half of the boats that we are selling are foreign flagged vessels. So yeah, the majority of them are taxes unpaid. I think recently we had a German client who had paid his taxes in Germany, but the boat was in Phuket. But those taxes, as Patrick said earlier, would not become applicable unless the boat was bought by a German and he was taking the boat back to Germany, which seldom happens.
And then the reason we ask that is because when you look at all the brokerage websites and you see the boats that are listed as taxes unpaid, they are normally listed for a slightly lesser value. And that's because the seller is not trying to recoup the taxes they've paid on top of what they paid for the boat. So my understanding is that in brokerage land, a boat that has remained taxes unpaid is often going to be a slightly better, sometimes the smarter purchase, because the seller isn't trying to reclaim their taxes.
Sure.
Yeah, okay. So clearing that one up. And then also, just before we jump on the cruising areas, Thai marinas that we were talking about, this is from Nathan. What's their rules in terms of liveaboard in the marinas, and also what's the rules or what's the approximate costs of marinas in Thailand?
And sleeping aboard is commonplace. It does happen in quite a few of the marinas. So yeah, there's not a problem there. I think the easiest way for me to answer Nathan, Greg, is if he just wants to drop his email address down, and I can forward him all of the rates per foot. And if he gives me the dimensions of his boat, I can just give him the information direct from each marina.
All right. And so I think if anyone does want to know what the cost of marina berthing is, don't be shy. Just drop us a message, and because it's a bit of an open-ended question at times about how much are marinas. So if you've got a specific question on that, we can answer it, but we just like to know a bit more detail. Okay, so let's get into the fun stuff.
I had a quick comment there from one of our colleagues, the broker. He reminded that those taxes that we were talking about specifically in Australia are payable on the boat plus the costs of the delivery. So if you ship the boat across on a cargo ship, it's going to be the boat that you pay, the price that you paid for the boat plus the cargo delivery costs all the way to Australia. If it is on her own bottom, then it'll be some fuel costs and everything that you have to add there as well. So as you said earlier, Greg, they're really onto it.
But that's a really good point, because that's the same with any of the new boats that we sell, that we always have to add the shipping to the calculation for duty and GST. So yeah, so it's important to remember that if it's a brokerage boat, if you're picking it up in Thailand, putting on a ship, add the value of the shipping to the boat for the calculation. Good questions. Thank you. Okay, so now we're going to get into the fun stuff. We're going to talk about the cruising grounds. Okay. And sorry, and just on that, I think it's on the last leg of the trip, isn't it, Patrick? You know, when you're trying to calculate if you've sailed the boat or delivered the boat yourself, if you were going to Bali, it would be on the cost of the leg from Bali to Darwin, wouldn't it? Is that true or false?
Yeah, correct. From the,
Yes.
the time that you purchase the boat and then your arrival there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, on the last leg. Yeah, sorry, it's not
On the
all
last
way.
leg, yeah.
If you go cruising around the world,
Yeah,
you would
yeah. So
accumulate on the last leg.
yeah, so you can sail down through Thailand and Indonesia and do all that. None of that. It's just that it's where the last country that you checked out of across into Australia. That's the costs that they want to know about. So that was Rachel. I think you pulled that one up. Thank you, Rachel. Okay, let's talk about the cruising area, Paul.
Yeah, so I mean, 18 years ago when I first arrived here as an instructor and a charter skipper, I just was blown away by the cruising ground in between Phuket and Phang Nga Bay down to Langkawi and even a little further than that. Just you can do so much every single day, you know, and I think this is, you know, as you said at the start, it's part of the idea is, you know, why not enjoy the beautiful cruising ground that you probably many Australian buyers, for example, or even European buyers, they may never have seen. And we've got so much to see on the doorstep, and it's very cheap. And again, one thing that we talked about last week, in Australia, you haven't got the capacity to drop your anchor or take a mooring buoy and then literally just take your dinghy, go ashore and eat dinner. And that's what cruising around Thailand and Malaysia and Indonesia is all about. And there's hundreds and hundreds of beach restaurants around Phuket, and it's just nothing better than just dropping your anchor on a white sandy bottom and either swimming ashore or you know, taking your dinghy ashore and going eating some beautiful Thai food and a few beers. It's but Phuket to Langkawi is it's up there. It's absolutely outstanding. But as I said, I mentioned earlier on about this big 70-foot boat. They wanted to cruise, and there's Phang Nga Bay, very sheltered, very beautiful. But they took 4 months to sail all the way through the region. And I think, you know, they stopped off at Singapore for about 4 days and did some shopping. They went on to they went up towards Borneo and caught a Kinabalu. They came back down and went to Komodo. You know, they sailed. They went across to Jakarta and left there pretty quickly. Apparently, they didn't like that. So, but then they get down to Bali and had a great time in Bali. You know, and just done so much diving. Beautiful, beautiful islands, and there's no one around. It is absolutely empty. And if it isn't, just around the corner, there'll be somewhere where you can enjoy it. And they checked in at Darwin. They had some maintenance and some reprovisioned in Darwin at Cullen Bay. They stayed there for about a week, and then they headed off over the Gulf of Carpentaria, and now they're doing the East Coast. So, I mean, back nearer to home around Phuket, off to the west side there, we've got the Similan Islands, the Surin Islands, which I know we've got slides in here. But firstly on Phang Nga, as I said, it's very sheltered. Very short stops. I mean, you can literally stop every 10 minutes. There's something else to see, or a hong, which is the Thai word for a cave or a room. You can escape the crowds. I mean, this point here, it's James Bond Island, which was used in the Man with the Golden Gun movie. There's lots of crowds there, but, you know, as I said, just around the corner, there'll be no one. So, you know, you can also, these long-tail boats, traditional Thailand water taxis and fishing boats. And, you know, you're sailing through Phang Nga Bay, and the fishermen are holding up prawns and squid, and you can buy it fresh straight from them and use your barbecue. Fantastic. Otherwise, as I said, there's
Paul,
hundreds of restaurants too, so it's great.
And my background was many years ago in the yacht charter business as well.
Yeah.
I remember, and I think for a lot of Australian and New Zealand clients, especially Australians who've chartered and sailed the Whit Sundays, where they rent a boat and sail, or even people who are sailing their own private boats up and down the Australian east coast, you generally have to do massive provisionings on the mainland towns and so on, because there really isn't any facilities out on the islands other than if you go into the resorts.
Mm-hmm.
The thing about cruising the Thailand and Malaysian cruising areas, and probably most of Asia, to be honest, is the fact that wherever you anchor, you go ashore and there's normally a restaurant, a beach, and good quality restaurants. And but just that whole food and beverage experience that comes as part of the sailing experience is, I think, the point of difference often.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we'll just come over here.
So yeah, I just wanted to point out, this is for Phuket, the seasons, by the way. So the high season here in Phuket is December. We're just starting our high season now, and hopefully the rains have all gone, because it's been an exceptionally wet year. But December to April is typically the high season here in Phuket with a northeasterly breeze. It's a sunny time of year, but it's a slightly cooler time of year as well. The real hot time is April, May, where the humidity increases, but that's the start of the southwest monsoon, which runs through to November. So the seasons, there's two seasons, basically. One's hot and dry and one's hot and wet. If anyone is cruising this area as well, there's a fantastic publication, which is the Andaman Sea Pilot. This was written by an Australian, well, he was one of the writers, Bill O'Leary, along with Grenville Fordham. And there's some amazing photography and great anchorages and information in that book. It's written by all expat skippers, but it's well worth buying, or it's available online now as well. But it covers this whole region all the way along to PNG and Northern Australia.
Very good. And in Thailand, so where you're talking about there is Phuket for those seasons, but as soon as you flick over into the Gulf of Thailand, it's the opposite way around, yeah?
Yep. Yeah, like Koh Samui, for argument's sake, in December is usually their wettest month. And December here is the start of our dry period, although, you know, December it does often rain, but January, February, March, on the whole, they're pretty dry months.
Okay. That's an aerial view of Phang Nga Bay.
Yeah, absolutely stunning.
Krabi.
Yep, we got Krabi's a 2-hour drive. It's probably in a powerboat, it's about the same length of time, but in a sailing boat, you can sail from Phuket across to Krabi in a day. It's very popular. Fantastic anchorages, beautiful cast limestone landscape, lots of bars and restaurants. It's not as busy as Phuket, but it's half the size, half as busy.
Very good.
Yeah, PP is in Krabi province as well. Again, lots and lots of restaurants, nightlife. PP is where everybody wants to head to, but it does get quite busy in peak season, but it's an absolutely stunning place.
Is it fair to say, though, at the moment, post-COVID, that, and I don't want to make out that it's dead quiet, but it is a bit quieter, because I think China, for instance, is still closed, so that you don't have as many of the Chinese tourists at the moment. Is that correct?
No, that's correct. I mean, it was very, very quiet, but in the last 6 weeks, there's been a huge uptake. There's a lot of tourists in Phuket at the moment, and I would say, in comparison to previous years pre-COVID, I would say it's running at about 65%. It's very busy. The roads, you can see on the roads, the traffic's increasing, but the business is coming back, which is good for the charter companies. It's good for the sales companies with people with their second and third properties around the world. They're back, and they're buying boats, new and pre-owned.
Very good.
Yeah, again, the Simmerlands, 55 miles off the coast of Phuket. There's some fantastic diving to be had, and even beyond the Simmerlands, there's a very popular fishing ground where people go for marlin on specialist tours. But the Simmerlands are just to die for. It's paradise. Again, slightly north of the Simmerlands, you've got the Surin Islands, which again, it's a few days trip, but this is heading towards Burma or Myanmar. The Surin Islands, again, it's just untouched beauty, and there's native people around here, and again, native people in Myanmar that they just can't believe they see a boat pull up. It's just amazing. Yeah, again, up to Myanmar. You need special passes to get entry into Myanmar, but again, it's something that can be sorted out here through ourselves, or we put them onto an agent. Yeah, and there's some fees to enter there by sea, but again, absolutely stunning cruising ground. Again, down to the west coast of Malaysia. This is down in Langkawi, where there are 3 marinas and a lot of mooring buoys and anchorages. Beautiful island. There's 99 islands in the Langkawi group, and yeah, it's a different experience to Thailand, but one that if you've never seen, it's well worth the trip. And beware of the monkeys. There's lots.
And my favorite experience there is the floating fish restaurants.
Yep, absolutely brilliant. And again, the prices compared to a lot of what expats are used to, it's cheap. But after Langkawi down to Singapore, I would say that the coastline, the west coast after Langkawi, is it's a little industrial. It's good for the marinas in Pangkor, in Penang, and even in Port Dickson, and then down to Puteri Harbour opposite Singapore. But the east coast, which I think is on the next slide, the east coast of Malaysia is fabulous cruising too, if people get the chance to go there.
And Malacca, is there marinas in Malacca?
Yeah, no,
Not really. No.
Usually sail past Malacca, with all due respect, but the east coast of Malaysia, the Perhentian Islands, Tioman, Terengganu, Redang, just yeah, it's beautiful, and you're in very close proximity as well to another great dive site called the Anambas Island Group, and again, you're down to near Singapore. You have Batam and Bintang just across the way there. So
correct me if I'm wrong, but the beauty there as well is if you were cruising and you wanted to have visitors fly in to join you with you, it's not that hard to get to from Singapore or wherever. No, correct?
Absolutely. I mean, you can. I pulled in at Tioman some years ago, and we anchored there for a couple of days, and someone flew into Kuala Lumpur and then took an internal flight from KL and landed in Tioman, which is a hair-raising airport. But yeah, for sure, Singapore, KL, Bangkok, Phuket, they've all got international airports.
Very good.
And
okay,
then again,
so that slide's, sorry, mate.
All right.
That slide's an interesting one, because that's where our office is in Singapore, yeah?
Yeah, that's 1 degree 15 Marina on Sentosa, where we have our office, and manned by Mr. Daniel Lau. It's a great spot. I mean, some people, they love the beaches and they hate the cities, but if people do want a city break, it's 550 miles. It's probably a 5-day trip from Phuket, dropping your pick or using the marinas each night. But very good marina, and you're 10 minutes away from one of the most vibrant city centres in the world.
But there's multiple marinas in Singapore, yes?
Yeah, there are 4 main ones, but there are other couple that are just used for locals. So you've got Raffles Marina is on the north side. You've got
the Yacht Club.
Yeah, right. There's marinas all over the island.
And that marina we're looking at there is, when it's on, that was where the Singapore Boat Show was held, right?
Correct. The Singapore Boat Show is usually around about April time, which is a Thai holiday time, but that's going to be on again this year, all being well. And just watch this space. We'll probably be exhibiting a couple of our boats there, hopefully.
Very good.
Again, through Indonesia, just untouched, unspoilt. There's beautiful anchorages all the way along down to Australia, as many of the people have been doing lately on the route.
Now, well, I'm just going to stop you there for a minute. We've just have a little break from the geography cruising lesson. Couple of questions, Paul.
Yeah.
One, and we've got a great supporter of ours and us of him, John Hembrow, has tuned in, and he's asking some great questions as always. He's asked, guys, a couple of questions. Some people have said that security is an issue when cruising in Southeast Asia. Any thoughts on that, Paul?
Well, we often come up with the, when I used to work doing a cruising a briefing for guests coming to charter for a week, they all seem to come out with the same question. There have been, I think, 2 instances in 20 years in, around Thailand and Malaysia. They're very few and far between. And I would say, I would go as far as to say that it's probably similar numbers than everywhere else in the world. But I've sailed here for many, many years, and I've never had any security issues at all. I think there was a charter boat stolen about 2 or 3 years ago, where some guys stole a boat from Phuket and they sailed it all the way to Australia and then got arrested. But as far as pirates and the like go, nah, they're few and far between. And as I said, 2 in 20 years, that's not bad numbers.
And then is communicating with the locals difficult when cruising away from the main tourist destinations? Is there much of a language barrier?
Yeah, there certainly is. But, at the end of the day, a lot of people are looking for food, for drinks, or for water, or for fuel. And it's a bit of a universal language when it comes to those four matters. But yeah, for sure. I mean, in that map there, the number of languages that are there, it's going to be an issue, but you make do.
Part of the fun.
Part of the fun, part of the beauty of it all.
And then I know the answer to this one, but I'll let you answer it. Is your region affected by cyclones? Obviously not, but I'll let you explain.
The cyclones or typhoons that usually come across in September, basically on that stretch in between the Philippines and Vietnam and up to Taiwan, sort of that kind of area. We do certainly get spin-offs. We do experience extreme squalls. And also on the western side, you have Myanmar and going up to Bangladesh and India. They often get hit by tropical storms as well. I think the strongest winds I've experienced in Phuket are probably around about 50 knots. That's about as strong as it gets, but actual typhoons passing, we don't get them in Phuket, or touch wood, we haven't had them in Phuket. But yeah, they're concentrated mainly out in the Andaman and in between the Philippines, Vietnam, Taiwan.
The general rule of thumb, I think, is that if you're around about 10 degrees north, in between the band of 10 degrees north and 10 degrees south of the equator, you should hopefully not have to be experiencing cyclonic activity. But I know that things have been a bit weird like that lately, with some of the cyclones or typhoons up in the Philippines have been forming a little bit within the 10-degree line. So yeah. But so, and your latitude in Phuket, I think, correct me if I'm 8 degrees north.
8 degrees north, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Hope that helps there, John. So thanks for the question. And then Nathan has asked a question going back to brokerage sales. Do you notice a difference or a fluctuation in your listing prices and so on, or the volume of sales by season?
That's an interesting point.
Like, is there a right
Happy to
time of
jump
the
in
year?
there.
Actually,
Look,
I don't think we do. I mean, that's been proven over the last 2 years during COVID, where we're averaging about a fortnight. Yeah, there are little patches. I mean, at the moment, December's usually quiet, and I know times have gone a little bit awry, but December and Christmas is usually, I'm sure you'll agree, Greg, it's a quiet time for normal boat sales. But this last 2 weeks, it's been absolutely crazy. So
Yeah.
there isn't a real pattern to it.
I think prices are worldwide now, and they're not really affected by any seasons. You may find more boats in Europe after the summer, of course, when people have finished cruising, and some of them will think twice or have some other plans and move on and put their boats on the market. So you see a few more there. You see quite a few in the Caribbean. Prices sometimes are a little bit higher in the US, but the boats are heavily equipped there with aircon, genset. They're also 110 volts, so it's a bit different. But otherwise, we haven't seen many fluctuations over time in terms of seasons.
Now, keeping you on the line, Patrick, this is a question we always get asked in these webinars about brokerage. Do you offer buyers brokerage services for boats not on your website? And is that an additional cost to the purchase price?
Yeah, look, I think it is a great service that we offer as a broker. By a broker, we are happy to assist anyone looking for a boat overseas and so who can benefit from or experience or network to help him negotiate the right price, get access to the boat and follow the right process, use our tools there, the escrow account and everything. Price-wise, if you let us make the first contact with the selling broker, we should be able to share in the commission there with him. If there's nothing there available or he doesn't want to share with any other broker, well, then we'll come back to you and ask you whether you are happy to pay something extra for our service. So we can go there on a case-by-case basis. But yes, I think it is a great facility or service that you can benefit from the broker in your area who can help you find the right boat for you. And we've got on our website there, I'm happy to send the link, but there is a lot of information about that service that we offer, what it entitles and how to make it work.
Very good. Nathan did ask another question, but I'm actually going to leave that one alone. I'm going to let Patrick maybe come back directly to you about that one, Nathan. John Hembrow, so we're back into talking cruising now, because John's obviously runs all the down under rallies and so on. And he's done a lot of cruising. So he's asked a good question here, Paul. Mm-hmm. Because when they're sailing all around the Pacific, it's all about taking presents and everything for the villages and so on. So he says, what do you suggest you should carry aboard by way of gifts when arriving at an anchorage with a village? Have you come across that around Asia, Paul?
I'm afraid I haven't. I mean, my cruising probably stops when you get down to Batam. I haven't gone through there too far. And even in Burma, I didn't come across any villages. So I'm sorry, I'm afraid I can't help you there. John, you probably know more than me.
So if there is anyone watching the webinar today who has cruised through the Indonesian area specifically, or the Philippines, the Western Philippines, let us know if that is something that you do like we do when we're out in the Pacific. And
a very good point of contact, though, Greg. I could strongly recommend the marina manager at Nongsa Point in Batam. Fantastic marina, lovely guy. Is Prakesh Reddy, and I'm sure Prakesh will be able to give him advice on what villages and gifts and the like can be sought from him.
Also, are there any customary ceremonies that should be followed when visiting, like there are in some of the South Pacific countries? So again, these are questions that might be best found in the cruising guides. But
yeah, the Andaman cruising guide's very good for that. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of Islamic regions where you should respect people not just going ashore in swimsuits, and at least cover up. I think that's the most respectful one that should be adhered to, is the dress code.
And again, we talked earlier on one of the earlier slides, we've got the cruising guide, but another great source of information is a forum, a website forum for cruisers called Noonsite. And I'm sure those sorts of questions could be answered on Noonsite.
Yeah.
And is navigation easy? Chart accuracy? 2 more questions there for you.
Yeah, there are definitely some slight variances on charts. You've got to be a little bit careful. You know, very often you look at your GPS after you've dropped your anchor and you're actually shown as being on land. It's not too far out. In some cases, I'd say it's about 50 to 100 meters, but yeah, you just got to be careful and use your charts.
Very good. Okay. So I'm just going to flick to the next slide. Okay. Oh, sorry. We're up to Q&A. Patrick, are you able to see the questions?
Yeah.
Yep. Did you see that one from Nathan about the unfair question? If you could have a read of that, just let me know if you want to just answer that one directly to Nathan, or whether you want to answer it now. And then because we've been answering questions as we've gone, we've actually answered all the questions we have, unless there's something I've left behind. So Rachel, maybe let me know if you think I've missed one. I think we've done a pretty good job of just answering the questions as we go. Is there anything else you've thought about as you've been talking through this today, Paul, that you're now going, oh, I need to talk about that?
No, I just think if anyone has any doubts about Phuket, then please come and try it, because I can strongly recommend, after living here for 18 years, it's a fabulous place. And, you know, fellow industry partners we've got here in Thailand, many who I've worked for and worked with, have been here from France, from Australia, from America for 20, 25, 30, 35 years, you know, and they're still here in their 70s now, but they're all very good to tap into advice, like the likes of Vincent Tabator, Andy Dowden, Bill O'Leary, Grenville Fordham. There's just a massive knowledge around. So I've tapped into their knowledge and like to spread it to our clients as well.
And Paul,
if anyone's got any questions, though, please contact directly or call by them or the Boat Lagoon office and see me at any time.
And Paul, you speak Thai, right?
A little bit. I wouldn't say I'm proficient, but yeah, Thai's okay.
So there was one other unanswered question. It was from Rich Taylor earlier. It was about being domiciled in mainland China. Rich, with that one, I'm going to get Patrick or Paul to come back directly to you on that one after.
I thought you might be best suited there because you know a little bit more about China than we do.
Yeah. So we can answer that.
But look, no, on his unfair question, there is no unfair question. It's pretty simple. We are there, obviously, in between a buyer and seller, and who are we favoring to earn or commission? It's not an unfair question. We want the deal to happen, and we are there as a go-between. So we bring the boat to the market, we bring the offer from the buyer, and we are trying to negotiate the right price between the two parties. At the end of the day, we are instructing, or we are advising, better said, the seller to the market price that he should list the boat at. Sometimes, often, they're not that reasonable, and they want to get a bit more, or they think the boat is the best in the world and they're asking for more. So we try to be fair ourselves there in between, and usually advise our clients with the market prices and everything. But it'll be a game. We pass on the information on both sides, and we help negotiate to find the best outcome for both parties. It goes, you know, it takes two to dance there. And if one feels that it is not fair for him, it doesn't go doesn't go ahead with the deal anyway. I hope that
very good. And then financing for residents in Thailand who are, so for expats, can expats get finance in Thailand to buy a boat, Paul, from your experience?
No, they can't, unfortunately. It's been a question that's been asked many times over my stay here. The Thai banks will basically finance what they see as an essential item, i.e. a house or a car. cars classed as essential, but I've had one Thai person who has managed to source financing through a bank. I don't know how he did it, but expats go into a bank, they will not get credit, I'm afraid.
Okay, very good.
I think I can help there a little bit as well, if you allow me. Financing is a recurrent question that we get from a lot of our clients. Unfortunately, obviously, for those overseas, there is no financing that we can offer to someone who is an overseas resident. You have to check with your own bank. For more experience, there are not many tools unless you have plenty of assets and you're just cash poor on the day. You will probably get some help from your bank, but unless you live overseas, like in Europe, where they have some very exciting tools there with the leasing and everything, it's a very poor option that you find usually in all latitudes there. It's not very well suited. So in other words, if you don't have the money, you won't get financing.
And another great question just came in right at the last minute there from a client I know called Rod. He's going, how difficult is it to get insurance? I'm led to believe it's getting more difficult for many cruising grounds. Great question, because it does come up a lot. How do you go, Paul, over there in Phuket? You're selling the boats?
The last few years, there's been an increase in insurance premiums, for sure. I know that some of the insurance companies have become reluctant in insuring older boats, especially older wooden boats. And I think, you know, with COVID, there's been a lot of boats that have sat still for 2-3 years that have experienced issues recently because the owners or operators have turned up just expecting to turn the key and the boat's going to work fine. But we all know that doesn't happen. But yeah, I mean, there's some very reputable companies. I did see the email, but we thought we'd keep all the questions in here. I will answer that question with 2 or 3 insurance representatives and companies here in Phuket that I could recommend to him.
But my understanding also, Patrick and Paul, is that now the insurance companies I think they call it fluid insurance, which is where your premium quotes or your premiums will change depending on where your yacht is located. And for instance, I have a lot of boat owners at the moment. I say, oh, where are you? Oh, yeah, we've anchored happily on the Gold Coast. We're not allowed to go north at the moment. And so what that is the insurer is saying you have to be further south than a certain point because you're not allowed, because we probably won't insure you if you want to sail up into the cyclone region at this time of year. So it's all about being in the right place at the right time of the year as to whether you do or don't get insurance. Is that how you see it, Patrick? Yeah,
I would agree there. It's they've got a lot of parameters there to base their decisions on, but the main rule is, to stick to fairly recent production boats if you can, preferably if you don't want to run into any issues with insurance. Otherwise, it's still possible, but more difficult. I can think of, if you have a custom trimaran, for example, you're going to be struggling there to get a cover. So the rule of thumb there would be to stick to recent production cuts, preferably new, and call Greg for that. But otherwise, and also where, you're perfectly right, where and when. So if you want to cruise now from the Pacific there, say across from Tahiti into Australia, you'll be obviously struggling because it is in full cyclone season. So no one will insure, or very few companies will cover you. I don't think any would. So you do it at your own risk. So yeah, location, timing, and the best thing is probably to follow the main trends of people, trade winds and all that, going into places where other go as well. That's the easiest to get the right cover. Very good. So I think we've now exhausted all our questions, and there's been a couple of we have to give a gold star to a couple of our good questions. Nathan, thank you. You've asked a lot of questions, and Nathan also said thank you, gentlemen, for such good information.
I think that's been really good. That was exactly what we set out to achieve, was to, what do they say? The fear of the unknown, remove the unknown, remove the fear. That was the objective today. So I think we've removed a lot of the unknown. People now know who to contact if they do have more questions. It's great for everyone to meet you, Paul, and your team. So yeah, feel free to contact us. Feel free to tap into the resource that is the Multihull Solutions and the Yacht Sales Co. If we don't know the answer, we'll find it out for you, but it's all part of the service. So Paul, thank you.
Thank you.
And Patrick, thank you. Well done, mate.
Thank you everyone there for following us and being here watching.
And Rachel, thank you as always for helping with in the background there with the Q&As and so on. So on that note, we will say goodbye, and then we'll notify everyone when we're going to do a similar presentation about the same thing in the Pacific. Thank you.